So we all know our speakers, and Rob Kellogg here, the Executive Director of Silicon Couloir, a seasoned social impact leader, founder, and educator with 25 years of expertise in organizational management, strategy, public policy, and sustainability. And Rob has substantial intercultural experience attending a French bilingual elementary school and living and traveling in over 30 countries. So, Rob, take it from here.
Thanks, Sue. Let's give a round of applause to Sue for putting this on. And also recognition to Sandy, who put this on last year, that was year one. This is year two. And Lynn and her support for the CWC, which is a co-convener of this. Thank you. So one of my pet peeves about panels is that, like, the person sitting in this seat is just going to dominate the Q&A and just ask questions with the panel. So we're actually not going to do that. I'm going to get us started, but I'm going to open it up to all of you. My promise to you is that everyone in here who wants to ask a question, I'm going to try to make that happen. All right? So we're going to make this really dynamic. We'll go one for one. We'll see how it goes. But start thinking about your questions now. But I would like to get started. You've heard all four of them speak. And, Leyla and Shawn and Howard and Vivienne, all coming from this topic, generally speaking, from very different perspectives, very different life experiences. They covered, the content, the diversity of the content across the four speakers was amazing, right? Just in terms of just what you got talked about and then how you talked about it, wonderful. And so, what we're going to try to wrap this together in some sort of coherent bow. And figure out what are some big takeaways that we can bring back to our work, our life, our family, our communities after this conference, and how to keep moving this work forward. So I want everyone to think about what's the one word that it comes to mind when you think about what it means to be a leader in 2024. And then I also want you to think about if someone were to have asked you that question 20 years ago, would it be different? So we're going to get started there. So I'm going to kind of put you guys on the spot. We haven't prepped all this, and that's, people who know me, they kind of get worried about me going off reservation. I don't do script. I like to go free form here. So let's start with you, Leyla. What's the word that comes to mind for you in 2024? And if someone were to have asked you that question 20 years ago, would it have been different? And maybe just talk about why that would be.
So my word today would be hope, because I think hope is like the ultimate form of resistance. It's something that we can use as our own energy source to imagine the world in a different way and our role. And when we lose it, we lose a lot of our drive. And I've actually had burnout. Has anyone else had burnout? Oh my God. How weird is it when you go from caring about things to not caring about anything but then it's like someone took your life force away. So for me, hope is super important. And I'm based on my age, 20 years ago it would have been like party, I would say, or figuring my life out. Because when you're in your early 20s, you're really just trying to figure out who you are and what you want to do and how you can actually pay your rent. But I was also very into this from a young age, but I had no agency. I didn't see that I could actually influence in the world in any way. And if I look at my career and the position and the actual privilege I have to speak to people like yourselves and to speak to the UN and world leaders and governments all over the world, I would say that, maybe that 20-year-old self did all the right things to kind of figure out how to be a force for good in the world around us.
Thanks, Leyla. Shawn, what's your word?
Presence is what comes to mind for me. Presence really just encompassing everything from your state of being, your emotion, your energetic presence, but also just thinking about your ability to tap into all of your resources and bring whatever you need to the moment, to whatever the person you're with, the project you're working on. And it comes to mind because I feel like presence is something that's can be so hard to find with so much going on, being pulled in all different directions. But I think that's the word.
Would that have been different 20 years ago?
Yeah, I would say so. And you asking that, I realize I'm older than I thought I was, because I was about to say I was just a kid. I was like, oh no, I was not a kid. No. So thanks for that, Rob. I appreciate it. No, at the time, probably it would have definitely been a different word, because I really didn't know anything of presence in that way. Maybe I would have said boldness at the time, just based on the leaders I had seen and kind of where I was at the time. That's maybe.
Howard, how about you?
I would say selfless. I think that it's the word of the day, and we're struggling with it to know what that means and how to act on it. And I don't think it's changed. I think great leaders have always been selfless throughout the generations. I think you could go back 500 years or 1,000 years ago, and the great leaders of those all the times have always been selfless. And I think that's the struggle of today.
Great.
So I'm going to be a bit of a counterpoint, not because I'm endorsing the word I'm about to use, but let's call it the time word of the year when it comes to leadership, or at least many of the leaders you and I talked about yesterday, which is selfish and calculatingly slow. Just the astonishing degree in which people will do whatever it takes and say whatever needs to be said to maintain power for themselves, and all of the harm that causes, which I can only assume is because they don't particularly care about the thing that they are meant to be leading. If you did, I don't know. I couldn't imagine endorsing the beliefs that they engage in. But I'll say something very different for 20 years ago. Again, not to suggest that nothing's progressed. I'm very much in agreement with the words that have been used so far. It's just there's a clear tension in the world, both in business and in politics, of people who've made it all about them. Only they can solve this problem, and you should just do whatever we want you to. Whereas 20 years ago, I would be on that upswing in my life where everything was not just getting better, but getting unbelievably amazing, and yet hadn't tipped over into, oh yeah, you also get to be happy. So I was still in that moment of learning that it's not about you, that the value of I can make a meaningful difference in the world, even if it doesn't make me happy, and that could be enough. Within just 2 years, all of that would change. But in that moment, just that incredible lesson. So, and then the exact opposite of the word selfish, for me, selfless was a very real and lived experience 20 years ago, because I didn't think everything would work out well. I thought I just had to do it because it was the only thing that was working for me. And things worked out wonderfully well. So maybe the opposite of what you were intending to do, but 20 years ago, in a hopeless moment, it still led to something wonderful. And I wish we, as a society, could embrace that again in this moment. So that's my word of caution.
Thank you. So if each of you were to pick the thing that you're most passionate about right now, and let's assume it could be what you're doing right now, the organization, or it could be something that you would envision, and you were going to wrap an organization around it, and you had your choice to hire anyone in the world that you wanted to run with that idea, what leadership skill set would you look for in that person to run with your idea and work with you on bringing that passion to the world? We can kind of popcorn around, whoever wants to start.
I started last time.
Patience comes to mind.
Patience?
As one
You
piece.
would never hire me.
Yeah, you're fired.
So impatient.
But we need multiple people on that team, but
I love how you just switched immediately. You're like, patience, but I'll hire you.
and it's like we're building a team. It's gonna be, but no, patience, just knowing that things take time and things don't unfold the way we think they will initially. And I think, no offense, Leyla, but if we rush and push and force too much, then we can either burn out.
Break things.
Break things, sure. So I think there's certainly multiple skill sets, but that patience is definitely one that would be at the top of my list.
Well, let's see. I tell a little story? So when I was 20 years old, I'd grown up in retail, and my brother and brother-in-law both had furniture stores. And when I was 20 years old, I got a call from a guy that had 2 furniture stores in Salem, Oregon. His name was Sid Schuchtman. And he asked me if I'd be interested in coming to manage one of his furniture stores. At 20, absolutely. I never thought I'd get that chance, but here I was getting the chance. And so I moved to Salem, Oregon to manage one of Sid's furniture stores. And Sid was kind of a unique guy, he was health conscious in those times. He wore those shoes that tilt back, and when he'd go to the bathroom, he told me he had to have one of those stools.
This was back then?
Yeah, this was back then. This is 60 years.
Yeah, I just did the math.
60 years ago. So
They're popular again now,
yeah, I know they're popular again. So Sid would come to the store about once a week, and we'd do a tour around the store, and he would talk about what's going on, and we'd always go out in the parking lot and walk the parking lot. And the first times he did there, I didn't realize what he was doing, but there were always cigarette butts in the parking lot in those days because everybody smoked. And Sid would pick up the cigarette butts, and I used to tell Sid, I'll take care of it, just don't worry about it. And he said to me, Howard, if not me, who? If not now, when? And it was the lesson that I had that there's nothing too small for a leader. Mm-hmm. And so my words would be picking up the cigarette butts. And if I could do it with somebody else, it would be Sid. He passed away a long time ago. But he understood what life was really about and what leadership was really about in a very humble way. These were small furniture stores. I mean, Sid didn't have much money or anything, but what he had was a soul.
So you'd hire a smoker.
Yeah, I'd hire a smoker. I'd want somebody that would want to come and pick up the cigarette butts with me.
A doer. So I have something similar whenever I do hire. We do like a kind of survey or quiz where I bake in real life scenarios of actual challenges that my team have had and ask people to talk through how they would solve it, because I don't care what's on their resume. I want to see how they think. And so one time, I run this school called the Unschool of Disruptive Design, and we used to run these very experiential programs. You probably have a bank of experiences of where you're running an event and all sorts of things can go wrong. Showing up to run a breakfast, the door is locked, can't get in. Hungry people, 20 hungry people, you've promised them all pancakes, what do? And the responses are hilarious. The people who are like, I just go to McDonald's, immediately eradicated from the employment pile. People who'd be like, I'd find someone's kitchen and I'd cook them, or I'd get everyone over to their house, and they just think outside the box and demonstrate the creativity, the ingenuity, and the flexibility. And that's really when the people I would look to hire, because when you see that, you think, I want this person on my team because they're solving problems in creative and dynamic ways, and they're possibly enjoying it, and they're making it enjoyable for everybody else. So that's...
So I want to finish a story because it relates to you.
Did you not finish it?
No, I didn't.
No, Sid died.
I had one more piece, but you give me the perfect lead-in. So I interviewed a lot of people, to come to work at Starbucks, and typically they're always in executive positions or senior positions, in operations. And one of the things that I always do is go on a store tour. So we'd go visit 4 or 5 stores. Well, there was always a piece of paper or a few pieces of paper on the floor. And I'd always let the person walk in front of me. I didn't put the paper there. It was always there. There was always something.
This is a notorious problem at Starbucks, is what
you knew it was always going to be something. Or the condiment stand would be dirty. I don't care what it was. And if that person walked by that piece of paper and didn't bend over and pick it up, that was
testing for conscientiousness.
Yeah. If you're in retail, you pick up pieces of paper, or you clean. In Starbucks, it was always cleaning the condiment stand, and that was just an automatic. And if they walked past that piece of paper, I knew they didn't get it. So it goes to your thing.
I don't think anyone at Ross or TJ Maxx has gotten that lesson clearly beaten into them. I have two, I'll keep them pretty quick. One is I get asked a lot about education work. My two companies were originally education companies. My wife was a professor of education. So people have this idea that somehow I know something about parenting that they don't. And I guess I do, because I offer this answer, which is both, I understand, entirely unhelpful. I mean, almost aggressively so, while still being genuinely the best piece of advice I could give anyone about how to be a better parent, which is be a better person. Be the person you want your child to be. Far and away, the biggest influence you will ever have on them, by a long shot, is what you role model for them. And the wonderful side benefit is you get to be that person. And I've always only thought of that in the context of parenting, but I suppose I want a leader to be the person they want their employees to be.
Yeah, that's it.
Thanks.
That's it.
And it would be nice from the research for them to be pretty high in perspective taking and emotional stability, because I don't need the leader to be the smartest person in the room. Those aren't always the nicest and most thoughtful people. What I need them to be is to get everyone and understand how to get the most out of them in a positive and constructive way. And so that merging of that, having those core capabilities of truly understanding the people that are around you, and then taking on that admittedly really challenging mantle of, and then I am going to role model for everyone who I want them to be inside my organization.
Yeah.
Let's get a show of hands. Who here feels frequently overwhelmed by the pace of change? Wow, I thought more hands would go up. Okay, so it's probably about half and half. So this is a constant question I've been asking myself probably for the last year, is have we reached a point in human evolution with the rise of AI and technology and some of these other, near-term interventions? Have we reached a point where the pace of change is just it's accelerating so fast that, humans are being unable to respond effectively? Our brains are not advanced enough. We started off on the African savannah 200,000 years ago, and basically the main decision we had to make was, is there a lion behind that bush or not, right? And it wasn't too complicated. And I'm wondering, are we getting to the point where our brains are just getting overloaded with information, where we're just having a hard time adapting to the rate of change? And do you want to get started with that, Vivienne?
Sure. I've sharing the stage with people that probably also give a lot of talks. I can't attribute this to the right person, so if you happen to have it at your fingertip, but I think the line was, the world has never moved as fast as it moves today, and it will never be this slow again. Right. That was a good one, but I'm terrible at citations. So, needless to say, I could go through a long litany of things for which our brains is not very well evolved to do in the modern world, but I will focus on this. It takes me roughly 2 years to go from an absolute out-of-nowhere idea to building some sort of an AI system comparable to the best people in the world at that thing. It takes me 30 years, any of us, 30 years to build a human being. That's bad math for humans. If you saw that as a competition, if you saw that as machines doing the same things we do, or maybe it's the other way around, if you saw the point of humanity as filling that role anymore. But, it's both, maybe seems a little terrifying, but it's also releasing to know that we don't have to be the machine anymore. We don't have to memorize all of these facts. Please do. It makes us better even when we interact with AIs, but we don't have to have mastered all of that anymore. maybe just even the slide rule frees us up to do a thing we were never able to do before, and now we have AIs that can do the whole scope of a mathematical proof process. What it frees us up to be is human.
Yeah.
The very things that the savannah and innumerable other, I process milk, so my people came from foggy places in Northwest Europe. What we evolved to do shouldn't be filling a role in a factory line. It shouldn't be being a cog in a machine. We should be humans. And now, for good and bad, that's the only option left.
We're really being forced to struggle with that question right
And I think we dramatically need to change both leadership and training within organizations, development within organizations, and also our education system to respect that fact that it is both desirable and the only viable option to really embrace that.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to jump on this? We're going to actually do
I would
audience
actually
question next.
shift the perspective on what the rate of change that we should be concerned about is, because whilst AI is both a blessing and a curse, climate change might actually get us first. And I think one of the big problems that we have as humans when it comes to these very confronting, overwhelming, potential existential threats, such as the sixth grade extinction, the threat of climate change, and the collapse of many of the systems that sustain life on Earth, is that it is so overwhelming that we choose to ignore it. And most of us actually do this thing, where even I do it, where we go, oh, it's climate change, and we're kind of complacent to it now. And this is, I think, a very dangerous situation to be in, where especially those of us who are already turned on to this and interested in it, that we almost model a behavior of complacency to those around us who are perhaps not quite as aware of the intensity of the tragedy. And for many of us, those of us who live in Western countries will probably be insulated from the most horrendous effects. And as we speak, how many fires and floods, and what Miami just got hit, this year alone has been one of the most intense and extreme, and the human lives that have been lost, yet we are arguing over AI. No disrespect to everybody's industries, but when I kind of put it in perspective and think that most of the people who have the power to actually make change are insulated from the impacts, and they're also part of the problem that caused it to start with. So we have a real bias in decision making. I guess for me, the rate of change creates a sense of apathy. And because it's really dialed up in the last 24 months, the intensity has almost like created a desire to ignore or a desire to extract yourself from it because it's overwhelming. And that's my point on that.
Thanks, Leyla. We're going to open up to audience question now. Go ahead and stand up. I'll be able to hear you. The acoustics is good here, so just any questions? Anyone? Don't be shy. Go ahead.
There's a microphone right near you.
Okay. I'm going to go back to your...
I think.
Go ahead.
Okay. I am curious about the last innovative idea that got you super excited and hopeful. For instance, I just heard that they trained crows in France to pick up cigarette butts and put them in a box and get a treat. And that really excited me.
So last innovation that has got you excited.
Frappuccino. No.
Yeah, you gotta be ahead of the. You gotta be more active in the world these days. The rest of you. I was just in the Philippines. And the kind of bio-based material innovations are very interesting. There's so much innovation happening around turning bacteria cellulose into things, and the one product that it's been around for a while conceptually, but it's using pineapples and things. But you think how much untapped potential innovation there is that could solve a few problems at one time, and the willingness for people to get involved and invest in it, invest their time, their resources, and back these kinds of things. So if you're interested in investing in like sustainability, biomaterials that are scientifically proven, because there are some biomaterials that the impact of creating them is greater than the benefit you get from having them. But there are so many things that are happening right now around the world in this space. We know seaweed, but there's millions of different types of seaweed. So they all have different properties and could do different things. So there's lots of really fun and exciting innovation happening, and yeah, just it's about getting more people involved in that and getting more investment behind it.
I would say the most exciting thing for me is the advent of the idea that supportive care is more important than the care itself, particularly in the healthcare arena. That we've always focused on what are the cures, what are the medications, what are all those things. But the things that really serve people are the things before that. Is a supportive care to help people and their families get through these difficult transitions from somebody getting cancer and maybe dying. And that piece is really moving forward now at a really rapid pace, and you can see it starting to grab hold. And I think that's going to be the key to a real change in medicine. It isn't going to be the new piece of medication that comes along, a new medication that comes along. It's going to be the realization and the devotion of human beings and the human resources to the support of people in these difficult times.
I can throw in a couple. One is biotechnology. These are all going to be a little selfish in the sense that they at least come from my university. So a group at UC Berkeley has developed algae that produces industrial-grade oil. So you just have vats of this algae, and you skim the top of it, and you get oil that can be used for industrial purposes, rather than having to mine it out of the earth.
Does it sequester carbon in its growth stage as well?
As a side product of sticking that carbon into the oil,
yeah.
I don't know how much they've looked at it, that process. The other comes from my world in neuroscience. A group of people at UC Berkeley worked together to develop a technology called neural dust. So these are injectable nanodevices that are piezoelectric, so they turn sound into electricity and electricity back into sound. So
you inject it into your brain.
And you can inject it into your brain or your abdomen or wherever you want to.
Any volunteers?
And they can read your neural activity or pick up on other forms of electrical activity inside your body. You can play sound hypersonic signals in to activate them, and you can read hypersonic signals out to reflect the activity they're picking up on. So they write in and read out.
What?
And you can, and again, it's the idea that some of the amazing things we've developed
stay in there forever?
They naturally flush out over a couple of months. And so you go in for another injection. So let's say you have
new collagen.
Epilepsy, and they want to localize where your seizures are taking place. That's invasive brain surgery, and now it doesn't have to be anymore. And that's just one obvious use case. I, of course, used it on all of you to inject. Well, you don't need to know what. And the last I may have actually lost track of, despite the fact that it's something I was working on. So it's a broad idea. We call it, in line with what you were saying, Howard, we call it precision public health. So intentionally oxymoronic. The idea that the vast majority of positive health gain in the industrialized world comes from public health initiatives, not from new treatments. It comes from care writ large across society. But, as I was talking about last night, there's no average person. We're all different. So traditional public health needs to be a single message you could deliver to everyone. Imagine a similar approach being able to be delivered to each of us for the thing that would really matter for what we might actually need as a behavioral intervention before you ever became ill. So these are things that excite me because of their potential.
And I think all it's fascinating. To me, what came to mind, I think, just in terms of a practical day-to-day, it seems old school now. I was gonna mention ChatGPT and all the large language models, Gemini, Claude. pick the one, but I guess looking at it through the lens of an entrepreneur and small business owner, just thinking about how transformational that can be. I mean, how much.
I'm a ChatGPT virgin.
Yeah.
You are?
I've never used it. Yeah, because I've
never been in a Walmart.
I've never been in one, and someone made me go in one when I was in America last time. It was like a social experiment.
But I'm an American.
That's whoa. Where do you? Don't want it. You have someone shop for him. No. Yeah, I don't know. Like I don't want it part of my life. I like having to think and solve problems myself. I like having to, I know that I'm already using AI. I know that's happening. It's in all my devices. But there's a very different thing to deflecting my knowledge and learning process to a machine versus having to find it myself.
So if I might offer directly to you, and I gave this advice to a couple of people over the course of the event here, never in a million years would I use Gemini because I've collaborated with Google quite a lot over the years, but it's just like GPT in certain ways. I would never let any of them write a single sentence for me. I would never let them do anything for me. Instead, I do the exact opposite. I'm just finished a book, I'm starting my next one. I don't use it to write. Instead, I write the painful process of writing. And then I say, Gemini, you are my worst enemy, my nemesis. For my entire career, you have dogged me, found every flaw in my thinking, every mistake I've ever made, pointed it out to the public. Here is a new chapter from my book.
Editor.
Find every mistake and explain to me in detail why I'm wrong. But that's step one. Step two is, now you're my bored audience that doesn't understand why any of this has anything to do with them. Point out all the places where my research ought to be making contact with their lives, but I've failed to do so.
But doesn't AI also have a psychological problem? Like it hallucinates, it makes shit up, it doesn't understand
It is
art,
the world's largest autocomplete.
It's like Google, but in the future.
So, if you understand what it's really trying to do,
It's just I'm AI expert.
it's simply trying to produce the next word. That's literally, the energy budget of Iceland is spent in 3 days training it to predict the next word in all of the writing on the internet. And it turns out, when you ask it very particular, often unusual questions, is there a paper about this specific research subject? Shockingly, it always finds that paper. And then when you go look up the title it gave you, it's, a dissertation on the discourse of discrete mathematics with respect to blah, 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 and it has plausible people listed in the authors. No such paper exists. Because all it's trying to do
it's trying to achieve the goal. It's like a puppy trying to please you.
So let me ask a question here. I love this exchange. For those of you that feel, you want to, I know Vivienne's going to jump in on this one, but if you guys want to have a debate about this, do you feel that the profit motive around AI is going to swamp the concerns around building something that's going to have benefit to public welfare? Like Claude and Anthropic just announced yesterday, I believe.
Going to profit.
Yeah. Well, no, that's OpenAI. So yeah, this is we could go in a lot of different directions. OpenAI is shifting from a nonprofit to a for-profit because they just got valued at $150 billion, right? But Claude, Anthropic, actually just did something very interesting. This most interesting thing in tech, Nicholas Thompson, actually, this was his little quip yesterday, and that they actually trying to implement some controls to safeguard about these AGI models actually going rogue and just, wreaking havoc on the world. But talk to me in terms of how you're thinking about the for-profit, non-profit piece of what we're seeing with AI development, and do you think ultimately, the business interests and sort of capitalism motivation is going to just swamp public welfare on AI?
it wouldn't shock you to know I have strong opinions, and I'm genuinely happy to open this up to everyone else's thoughts on it. Clearly, if you were here last night, you know that Sam Altman is, I don't have anything personally against him, but I don't think he knows what he's talking about, which is disturbing because he's the guy who runs the company.
Don't all of his executives feel the same?
You know what's really
All of his
interesting though? Can I
executives
just
They just quit. They just quit.
I just want to jump in here on OpenAI. If I'm not mistaken, the 3 people most responsible for the development of the technology, the brains behind the company, are all women.
Oh, and who gets all the credits?
So Elias Satskraiva
right?
was
So
the chief
exhausting.
scientist. So
Thank
he was
you
the
for bringing that
co-founder.
up.
So that he's a man, but there are a number of prominent women involved in OpenAI. Nobody knows their name. You all know the name of this other blowhard.
And she just left, right?
And so the chief technology officer, who was responsible for building it, so the chief scientist sort of came up with the science behind it. She built all this stuff.
She just resigned.
She's resigned. He's resigned. When their board fired him, the board overreacted. I wish we had a Skynet problem. We do not. No one's invented anything remotely like that, OpenAI included. But they were told that there was something like that had been invented at OpenAI, and they did exactly what they were supposed to, which is stop development of the project. Then he said, keep going, against his own board,
Right.
and it's the avowed structure of the company. And it began to tear the company apart.
We're used to this.
And
So
the
didn't
profit
Google start
won.
like do no harm, and they're like started making money? You're like, oh, we don't need to have that rule anymore.
I mean, there's a degree to which, and I don't want to make this all about Silicon Valley or all just about AI, but there is a degree to which, this will sound completely unrelated, and I'll do it really quickly, and then I'll hold it over. A really neat paper came out recently looking at the difference in the economic performance of companies that were run by their founders versus run by what they described as professional managers, people with MBAs, gone to school and learned. And what they found was that the hiring of a professional manager did not at all improve the performance of the company. It didn't increase sales. It didn't increase revenue. The only thing it did is shift the share of returns from labor to owner. So essentially, they trimmed down the very things that had made the company successful and extracted more for the manager class. And as a member of the manager class, I thanked them. I needed that money. But honestly, it sort of speaks to this idea that these sorts of decisions have to be made to be successful. And yet that paper, amongst a large body of literature, shows that that is not at all true. They found no difference in performance between these companies, but that was just in the short term. I virtually guarantee you what they saw is what I call the Yahoo effect, which is once they became successful, they trimmed down, they got rid of all their research people. This happened also at HP, and again and again, they got rid of everything that made them great in the first place in an effort to optimize the company. And it didn't just lose its heart, it lost its future. They just sold their futures away. Mm-hmm. And so in that sense, I think it's a terrible business thing. It's a terrible long-term business decision to think everything's just business in a Michael Corleone sense. And instead, to really embrace what amazing thing got us here in the first place, which has nothing to do with AI or not. It was, you know, they had some faith that this thing could do something amazing. I would have been skeptical that LLMs ended up performing as well as they do, but they had the faith that it would work, and they went all in. They took big players like Google and Microsoft by surprise. But in the end, they decided to go fully in on, we're here to make everybody rich.
Just to the piece on the other side, which is about the kind of the value proposition of these economic machines, because ultimately that's what they end up being based on what you're explaining. I think, you know, the two big factors here are ethics and equity. So the debate on the ethics of this stuff, the rate of change of that is definitely not keeping up, because ethics as a species has always been something we've debated and discussed, usually at the same pace of the evolution. I mean, I remember sitting in a cafe a year ago and hearing the first news article like on a podcast about ChatGPT being launched, like 12 months ago. And the rate of infiltration and the fact that this organization that was set up under one pretense is now able to just morph into this other pretense without any accountability, without any mechanisms of social discussion and context, means that ethics is beyond the realms of anyone. So you just explained the mechanisms, and those mechanisms were disregarded. So why should they care, right? And then equity, I mean, everything we do has a cost, right? And that's not just the cost to the potential future that's being absorbed because of the decision now, it's also the cost associated with the people who are exploited for the development of the thing. And in AI even, the exploitation of people who are behind the modeling in emerging economies, often very poor places, if you look into the psychological impact that a lot of these people have had as a result of, these big, Silicon Valleys coming in and doing cheap labor. So for us, we don't see the human cost. And we live, in a world where actually it's really important that other countries are healthy and happy because it creates security and stability. And so I think that there's a lot of discussions that need to be had around the global impact of this, but on equitable distribution or equitable impacts. And in this case, it's more so about who is suffering so that we can look up, something on ChatGPT for shits and giggles, which that's kind of one of the reasons I don't participate in any of them, because I just don't know the ethics of it. And I try to be as ethical as possible in my life and to make decisions with some sort of conscious awareness of the impact. And I just don't know enough to know that it's not going to be damaging. Also, if you speak to it and you say my name, it doesn't know who I am, which is really, really like it doesn't know Leyla Acaroglu, which is how you say my name. It only knows Leyla Acaroglu, which is really confronting. So yeah, that's another thing.
So I can't even pick up your suitcase. I'm not qualified to do that. But I've had two experiences in Silicon Valley. The first experience was I got a call. This was in the early days of Facebook. I mean, really early days. And Starbucks had this reputation for how we treated our people and building a strong culture. And so I got a call from these two engineers, I think they were, to want to know how to build culture, in the company. And I said, so the question I have for you, tell me what business you're in. Okay, and because you call yourself Facebook, so are you in the people business? And they said to me, no, we're in the technology business. And I said, so why do you call yourself Facebook? What is that about? And it was such a valuable lesson for me that they, and that's been the struggle with Facebook, with him all along, is that he didn't really see the connection between what he was doing and people. He saw it as a means to an end. And I had a similar experience with Google. I went down to give a speech to the ones that did the telephones, and so I always try to go early when I'm going to go give a speech so I can talk to the executives and talk to the people that work in the company and find out what's going on before I give a speech. So one of the questions I asked when I was in there, I said, have any of you ever tried to get a hold of Google? Have you ever tried to call into Google and get a problem solved? I have, and I've had problems. I can't find anybody. There's no telephone number, there's nothing. You know what the answer back to me was? Our stuff is so good, we don't need to have people on the phones. And I said to the guy, are you fucking kidding me? I came away so disillusioned from those two experiences. I think the threat to the world is Silicon Valley. I really do. I think the four most dangerous people in the world to me right now are Donald Trump, Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, and J.D. Vance. And you want to know why? Because they think that they know. They think that they have the answers of how the world should be run, and they don't know. And I came away from the conclusion, it's a broad generalization, but there's not enough human beings running Silicon Valley. Not enough people that understand what it really means to be a human being and to serve other human beings selflessly. And that's what scares me for my grandchildren. I'm 80 years old. Ain't gonna
There's
make
an
any
arm
difference
up.
in my life.
There's a very intense arm up there.
Yeah, but we're going to go to the audience. Yeah.
Oh God, your country's so confusing. That's like when someone has revenge porn put on the internet. No, truly, and they cannot get, especially young people, they cannot get any of these companies to respond to take down what is pornography and pedophilic act, and they don't take accountability. It's insane, right? Like you have young people's lives being ruined, and these companies saying, well, we're just the platform. You know, that we're just the town hall. We're not actually the people curating the information. It's the lack of accountability. Yeah.
Well,
they have
thank you for
Congress-
proving that Google is not perfect.
Yeah.
Question. Yeah, got to go with the guy who jumps up and yeah. Go.
Okay, so this question originally came to mind with Vivienne because it starts with research, but I think Leyla might have a really interesting answer. It also has to do with change, so I'd love to hear anyone's answer. So my question is, what is one thing that there's clear research that says it works and is accessible and there aren't barriers to, and yet we're not doing it?
And just to clarify, what's the it in that statement? What?
Anything. Like it could be something related to climate change.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So not particular. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
What is the thing that we go, we know this, we know how it works, we know it will work, but we're not doing it?
Okay. Who wants to take a stab at that one?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many in the sustainability world where, you know, and I take that broad concept to talk about, you know, ethical and environmental actions and social impact. But I also have a problem with one-size-fits-all solutions to complex problems. I think some of the things that we really need to do are not discovered yet. And so there's this lack of like, the progress on AI is so fast. If we had that progress on, you know, the technologies that could potentially solve our problems, like we now have plastics that are being eaten by mycelium, and we have all these like things popping up everywhere. You know, I just saw some sort of limestone being crushed and then filtered into waterways to sequester carbon faster. Like, there's a lot of stuff happening, but it's not happening fast enough and it's not being invested in enough. Like, the biggest challenge to a lot of climate tech startup is the investment. And part of it is, believe it or not, a lot of it is women, and only 2% or 3% of women are ever funded. So there's a huge funding gap and investment gap that happens. So I think that the big issue here is this willingness to be experimental in us figuring out the solutions. I'm not into the idea of like injecting sulfur into the upper atmosphere and some of these mass geo interventions, because humans have really messed that up in the past. So I'm into lots of micro solutions, tested iteratively, and once we've kind of got things going, we'll see which solution is going to actually get us to the outcome. But I mean, most companies could do sustainability tomorrow. It would save them money. They would have better relationship with their customers and their employees, but you have old people running them who don't care about their future because they're going to die soon. That was a joke.
I'll tell
I
you
realized it didn't land very well.
but something that's
It's late
working.
in the day.
Something that's working, tearing down dams. It's working. when they look at the research that's happened over the last 5 years as they've started to tear down the dams, the salmon are coming back and they're going upstream. And it's amazing what's happening. And the tribes, particularly the Pacific Northwest tribes in Alaska, Washington, Oregon, are really figuring this out and what to do. So there's something that we're getting, we know that it works and we're doing something about it.
Very cool.
So I'll give a very specific, also again, there could be a huge number of these, but this is one that I know is meaningful to some people in the audience. Overwhelmingly, education is passive. You sit in a lecture hall and people talk at you. It doesn't make them bad people. It doesn't make the system broken. The education system built the modern world for good and bad. It's been an amazing thing. But we know unambiguously that active learning is vastly better. And just as one very concrete example, Socratic method. Here, so we know it's better, and yet you will note there is very few places in the world where active learning is the dominant form of education system. And it turns out there's a very good reason, but it also is a bit of a twister, which is, turns out both the faculty and the students hate it. But here's what's funny. The students don't just hate it because it's harder work, and the faculty for the same reason, which is true. It is harder work. They hate it because they feel like they've learned less, when in fact, they learned vastly more. The reason you feel like you learn less is because it's exposed your misconceptions. And that's also why you learn more. So that's a great example. There are so many things in education and in workforce that we know work are not just there's one experiment. There's a whole literature showing its efficacy, and we don't do because we can't be bothered. And to be fair, they often have qualities like what I just described, which is the people experiencing it have this very embodied impression that it's not working, when in fact it really is. It's just we become very comfortable with comfortable things.
There's also a delay between the absorption of the information and the application and, so the engagement and that. So there's like always a delay. Don't you have those moments where you have an experience, your whole talk was about this, and then later you reflect back and go, oh, if that other thing hadn't have happened, if I hadn't experienced that, I wouldn't have this knowledge or perspective now. So there's a big delay between it. So it's not immediate gratification.
Yeah, I mean, another way of thinking about it is a sort of a fancy construct we put together called subjective futility, which I will sort of short note as, do you believe your hard work will pay off? And if you could get a student or anyone to believe their hard work would pay off, you could get them to do anything. And in this context, students aren't getting this signal that their hard work is paying off. They feel like they've learned less, they're putting in more effort, they're getting less for it, when in fact they're getting so much more.
You should just give them free food.
But we could say from a policy standpoint, we should be pushing this anyways. If it was the only system they knew, it would be the norm. But making that change requires the whole system to roll over.
Shawn, what's your quick win here?
Did you say quick win?
Well, yeah, like what would you point to in terms of something that is a proven invention?
Yeah, mine, I think, first of all, I'm just taking all this in up here. My head feels like it's about to explode in a good way.
Really? I'm finding this fun.
Here's what happens when you put an introvert on a panel. Come back tomorrow and I'll have thoughts on all this. But no, I guess in a very simple way, and it's again, the lens, and I'm a dad with 3 kids at home and trying to run a business and all the things, so that's kind of where my lens is always looking through. But I think what's fascinating to me is something as simple as the power of the breath, which we talked about earlier, but it's this idea of learning. Now we're learning more and more through science, the power of breathing, slowing down breathing, something that's obviously it's been with us forever, it's part of life, but ancient spirituality, it's nothing new, but now science is finally proving these things. As far as, to me, that's what, how do we keep up with all these other things we're we're talking about, the complexity of the world, and like take a breath to take it all in, but as a way to perform at a higher level in the face of all this. And I guess I say that related to things we know but we're not doing. We've made a lot of progress. I always love when I go through an airport and I see a yoga room or a quiet room or something like that. I saw an airport once that had 2 signs right next to each other. One said coffee this way and quiet room this way. And like, why can't they just both be? But
Quiet coffee? That's your dream? Quiet coffee.
yeah, just the coffee. But no, so something that's, it's a win. I'm glad to see.
I wrote it down.
Yeah, it could be the next Frappuccino.
I'm glad to see that it's more mainstream, because when I first started talking about this stuff 10 plus years ago, I didn't even use the word mindfulness in my talks, because I was like, let's just talk about it and not put a label on it, because that's going to scare people off. That said, there's still a lot of room to grow, because I think we were talking the other day, I saw an ad for a phone company, and I won't say which one it is, that their headline was multitasking to the max. Like, how can we do more faster, push harder? So there is still this tension. We know that we've got to slow down to keep up, but we also aren't doing it.
You want to know something that you can take home with you tonight that I know works? Okay, but when you go to leave the house tomorrow, right, and your significant other, spouse, is at the other end of the house, don't yell, "Love you, honey, see you later." Go up to that person, plant a big kiss on the cheek or the mouth or whatever it is, and hug them, and I promise you're going to have a different day.
All right, so I can see Sue over there. She's kind of ready to give me the hook. Let me do one more. Can I do one more question or no? You really?
It still says 5 minutes.
Yeah, it still
and
says
45
5 minutes
seconds.
for us, Sue.
Don't cut us off yet.
Well, so in the 5 minutes we have left, let's telescope back out. So let's end with this one. So we've got Steven Pinker, who wrote this book, Alignment Now. He presents reams of data to basically make the case that human progress is advancing, and we are far better than we've ever been in human history. That's on one side. And you know, he's very compelling in that argument. On the other side, you've got someone like Yuval Harari, who makes the case that he kind of calls into question a lot of what's happened in human history, calling into question the domestication of animals, agriculture, all that kind of stuff. Like to just popcorn around here. Are you generally optimistic in the progression of humans right now, or are you more on the cynical side? And keep in mind, like, cynics don't build armies or companies, right? But where do you fall on that spectrum? Are you generally optimistic or cynical about the direction we're headed as a human species?
Yeah, you're making it.
We have 4 minutes left.
I have to implicitly choose between two people that are academic enemies. But I wouldn't do what I do if I didn't believe people are amazing and can be better. So I suppose I'm more aligned with Pinker on this for a wide variety of reasons than Harari, but also it's hard. And I think you can be flippant in saying that we're better than we've ever been before and not acknowledging the people that have suffered to get us this far and how much more work is involved. So I truly believe in the potential of humanity, but we are so far from fully realizing it.
Great.
I'm struggling to turn my fear into faith. And that's the biggest, when I look at my life, it's what I think about almost every day, particularly if I get too much news or whatever it happens to be. The fear takes over, and I lose my connection to faith, and the faith that human beings will get better. And so that's my struggle. I don't know the answer to that. I don't really know where we are. Yeah. I thought I would by the time I got 80, but it didn't turn out to be that way.
Yeah, I would say I can definitely connect with that as well. I think at the core, I would say I'm optimistic and hopeful, also knowing that there's a lot of things that are very concerning as well. and I don't necessarily know how certain things look like they're going the wrong direction, and I don't really know how that turns around, but still at my core, I'm optimistic, believing that at some point it can and will.
Last word.
Well, I would say I'm a multiverse. I don't know how you guys feel, but like in one day, I could have 1,000 different thoughts and feelings about the world and the future, my own life and everything in it. If I see too much content on war, that's it. I'm done for the day. If I engage with anyone who is doing progressive things, I'm back in the like we're all great field. Like I really do feel very complex, and that I don't have. I mean, I don't have an opinion because I don't think the future is defined. And I very much believe in this concept of ontological design, which is that we design the world and the world designs us, and we are both a product of the experiences of which we are a part of, and we are also the creators of them. And so in every moment, I'm almost like a pendulum between that feeling of like, I can control my actions in this complex system that will then have a positive effect as the system evolves, and then also I'm a victim of this system, and I can't control the fact that there are 10 people controlling the world and most of them are men and they like to bomb and control the resources. So that's a long way of saying I'm okay with not knowing the future, but with holding those multiple spaces so that I can hopefully, as an outcome, participate in the grand experiment of humanity on the only known life-sustaining planet in the entire universe in a way that actually helps us get to a better place. Or we'll all die trying. See? It's all the sides. I don't know. And one or the other.
Thank you for joining us, not just on the panel, but for coming to Jackson and blessing us with your presence and your knowledge and your experience. We appreciate it.
I can't believe we ended on we're all gonna die trying.
No, but that's not.
I feel like you need to change that.
Wait, stop. That's not the
Can we
end.
sing again?
No, that's not the end.
No, it's not. Go
No, because what happens now, first I did want to, the question, second to last question that somebody asked of, what do we know that we're not doing that I'm super excited about? And I wanted to recognize the number of people, they're not all here now, but there were 15 or more people from the Wind River Reservation and our indigenous communities here in Wyoming. And I really do believe that this is something that people are starting to embrace again, and we have so much to learn, and there's so much knowledge that's there. We just have to listen. It's not in AI that's going to save us. It's things that we know. This is how I feel. So I just wanted to recognize all the people who came from Central Wyoming College and the Wind River area, and big hand. And then so this was such a exciting future-looking conversation, but really what this whole conference is about is what each one of you are going to do in the next day, and the next month, and the next year, and how we as a community have come together. So at this time, I'd love to bring up the facilitators who are going to tell us what happened in their groups, and so we can all witness the way forward.
Excellent.
I'll take that, Howard. I got 2 microphones. So I think that the best thing, maybe just whoever's speaking, come stand up here in the middle and just pass the microphone to the next person. These guys know the drill. They're going to go quick and let us know who you are and your main takeaways. Thank you.
It's bright down here. Can you hear me? I'm Stephanie Hardiman from Teton Teams Development, and I got to spend time today with the Sandhill Cranes. And we organized our reflection around connect, collaborate, and thrive. Around connecting, the Cranes discussed the importance of connecting or reconnecting with those around us. We also fostered some budding friendships based on some common interests. Around collaboration, we are really thinking about elevating the voices of others, and Howard's quote about those who sweep the room get to choose the broom really resonated with us in thinking about people in our organizations and how do we really listen to the people who are experts in their areas. Many of us are excited to go back and to collaborate with others using some of the new tools like the disruptive design method. And in terms of thriving, the micro shifts we're thinking about are, some of us are thinking about leadership retreats that we have coming up and maybe changing how we approach those based on the work of the last 2 days. Some of us are thinking about the wonderful young people we had in the room today and how we might be better mentors for them, and also all the things we can learn from them. And some of us are thinking about how Howard said we really have to serve each other before we serve others, and how sometimes in our teams we are really good at thinking about clients or students, but maybe not always really speaking and listening to each other in the ways that we should be. And lastly, we're all thinking about how to apply the systems mapping process we learned to some of the complex problems in our lives and organizations. Thanks.
Hi there. My name's Beth Stromberg, and I work at St. John's Health in the Human Resources Department here in Jackson. And I had the privilege of working with the river otters, up top, river otters. And you know, our group was really interesting and diverse in just kind of our backgrounds and our interests. We had parents, we had a couple of different educators, we had one of the folks from the reservation, and we ended up aligning on just what can we give to our communities, and particularly the young people in our communities, as we all kind of move forward with the pace of change and technology and so forth, and aligning around just grounding in our values and how values can be an identity for a community, particularly for young people, but really for all of us. And whenever, you know, what can we do to highlight that and reflect those values, to promote those values, to share stories of the folks that are contributing and exemplifying the values in our communities that become our identity, and also just expressing gratitude and returning to that. So.
Hello, I'm Casey, and I had the pleasure of being with the trumpeter swans who, if you're curious about their ecological role in our ecosystem, they are nutrient dispersers, and they also protect and support wetland ecosystems by nutrient dispersal, by making food available for other fowl that come behind them. And I think that's pretty appropriate for our group, is to create more opportunities for ourselves to know each other better, to have a thriving community, and to embrace connection. And I wanted to read a few of the things that people said when I asked them what the takeaways were. Developing leaders who serve others and to show that's good business. Defining your own integrity. Expanding your zone of comfort by identifying avenues of opportunity through willingness, grace, and humility. To push through challenges and adapt. To have persistence, authenticity, adaptability, and divergent thinking. To have an open mind, and to embrace the pause. And there are a lot that I would say that to summarize the actions that we're going forward with, a lot of it had to do with knowing yourself, giving voice to the actions, and reducing your assumptions about others. So that is what we came to conclude.
Hi there, I am Kristen Fox. I am the Executive Director of Momentum. My group were the Badgers, and while we didn't spend a whole lot of time exploring what it means to be a Badger, we did come up with some great takeaways. We really honed in on the message of resiliency, and we like the idea of developing a faith file and reflecting back on times that were hard for us. And the tendency when you come out of hard times is to sort of forget about it, right? Like, why would you dwell on the hard times? But it is really important to remember that you came through that successfully. We talked about finding our joy, balance, purpose, focusing on small steps. And I sort of liked how that piece tied into allowing you to be of service to others. Once you are strong within yourself and grounded, you can really bring your best self to the world. We also talked about the importance of critical thinking and questioning our motives and seeking out education. And in terms of some next steps, I love this idea too of bringing systems thinking to high school kids or even younger kids. Like, why not bring this model to them and start, going through that process together? So, yeah, and then we also just asked the question of like, how can we be okay with some of the lies that are out there? That was a big thing to ponder. So, yeah, and we've got our follow-up set, and the last thing that I'll share is that, as you're going through some of these tough challenges in your life, it's important to find support in the group, because you may just say it's too hard and stop there, but the group can really help you keep going. And so I think that's what we're hoping to do with ours. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jared Schoening. I spent the day with the Black Bear group, which, looking around, I think all of them have hibernated for the weekend here. They're really moving into that Friday mode. But one of the things that really bubbled up was this idea that came up kind of throughout all the conversations around like this idea of like no rules and disrupting and having that being that disruptive point of view. Kind of with Leyla through the idea of the circular economy and disrupting certain pieces to improve it. Or maybe with Howard and the Frappuccino and like just not following the rules. And then I'd say Dr. Ming kind of just her, like she's kind of not following the rules, but in the best way possible. That really kind of resonated and stuck with the group of how can they do that in their lives as well. And from that is like kind of challenging that status quo, but with the disruptive confirming and reinforcing questions, not really breaking it down and being actually disruptive in a negative way. And all that through the lens of that idea of servant leadership. How do we serve our teams and ourselves? Shawn talked really about kind of serving yourself in order to serve the teams, and it all kind of tied together. So that idea of servant leadership and how can the team, it wasn't necessarily a new concept, but it was like an increased level of motivation and focus on that idea. Actually, there is a bear here, I'm sorry. Not everybody hibernated. And then in terms of applying that, like taking that focus to their everyday lives, as well as like very specific things like Howard's idea of the idea board in his office, like one of the team members, like I'm doing that in a way appropriate for my organization. So, thanks.
Hi, I'm Chris Sheen. I'm a small business owner here in Jackson and sit on Kristen's board for Momentum and a few other steering committees. My group is the raccoons. I say is because hopefully we will continue to meet. A couple of things we did I think our group meshed really well even from the beginning on working on that great exercise. We talked a lot about our purpose in life and how that if the purpose is more internal versus external and how we live our life. Talked a lot about servant leadership. I kind of had a big question on that and not quite understanding and realizing that that's how I lead. I would like to put one of my raccoons on the spot. When I asked for kind of a wrap up, Chris really said some things very profound, and I would really like it if you could say it better than me trying to paraphrase your... Yes, please.
So one of the greatest things that I learned about here wasn't necessarily from the speakers, but from learning about all the perspectives from you guys. I've met with quite a few of you over the course of these last 2 days. And for me, this has actually been my very first social outing that I've ever really done without a comfort person with me. So it's been really, really far out of my comfort zone, to say the least. I'm blanking here, but honestly, being able to hear the perspective of my fellow Wyomingites has absolutely changed how I see things and how I'm going to see and do things in the future. And I'm going to bring that back with me to the various boards and people that I interact with, and it's going to be completely for the better. And so I want to thank all of you that showed up here to give your perspectives, to show me how you see things. Thank you.
Much better said than I could paraphrase him.
All right, thanks. Hi, everybody. My name is Cynthia Blankenship. I'm a geologist. I'm on the board of Silicon Couloir. And I facilitated the coyotes along with Dean. Dean, are you here? There he is, hiding in the back there. So I was really encouraged by our discussions. I thought they were, once we kind of got to know each other a little bit, I thought they were pretty open, in some cases vulnerable. And we really coalesced as a pack. And I say that not only because we were the coyotes, but we had, this is no joke, we had Chelsea Wolf and Christine Fox in our pack. So we are truly the canines. And I would say that most people, we reflected on a lot of the themes that we talked about today, that all the speakers talked about. And there was a lot of energy in the group. And however, I think most people's takeaways and commitments were fairly personal, some things that they're going to do in their own life or their work. But there were some themes that came out at the end. One of them, just two. One of them was finding purpose, but then pursuing that very mindfully. And the second was the importance of community. And I know we've heard that before, but community for the happiness that it brings and for solving problems collectively with all sorts of different perspectives. Thank you.
Hey, I'm Tom Thorsheim, and I was really moved by everybody's vulnerability in our group. We had a great diversity of age. One of the themes that came out was servant leadership and the importance of finding purpose before driving business decisions. Also, it's not important, you don't need to have the answers. It's okay to be not knowing. Not knowing is not a fireable offense. I think that was Howard Behr's word for it. That respect, or lack of respect for others rather, is what would lead to somebody not driving a successful business or being a good person in life. We also talked some about how to increase diversity in this community here, maybe ways of increasing grants or other opportunities, further outreach for folks. I was also very inspired, both in our group and also in the larger group setting, with the wisdom of the younger folks here. And in our group in particular, one of the youngest people was willing to push back and share diverse ideas that were different than everybody else in the group, which I found very inspiring. Also getting outside of one's comfort zone. And, I think that was a case in point within our group, people saying things that were not the popular opinion. So very inspiring group. And thanks to all the beavers that were in the group.
Hello, my name is Nikki, and I'm representing the Bison Group. Yeah. And when we meet again in early October, every Bison will have done their own personal mission statement. and identified their core values, and have done so using the systems mapping exercise that we learned from Leyla. We also had some bison that are already doing daily breath boxes, right? Yeah, box breathing. Some of them doing it 20 minutes per day, another doing it 3 minutes. So the others of us are going to start to do that, maybe not 20 minutes, but starting out slowly, baby steps, and doing that regularly. Those bisons who are doing teams and leading teams right now, redefining profitability and what that means more than just revenue and bottom line. There was a mindfulness around the circular economy and how we can impact that through things like not picking up a bag at a conference for swag. Those bisons that have an impact on old bills. What kind of swag are we doing and how much are we putting out there as waste? And those that are impacting education either as a parent or on boards or as educators themselves. How are we teaching our children? Are we teaching them just facts, or are we teaching them how to think about problems and how to solve problems and introducing AI in a thoughtful, intentional way as they are children? Resources was a question actually Sue brought up, and one of the resources that our group would love is to continue this throughout the year. So if there are ways to bring these back to teams inside of our organizations through facilitation or small group exercises, our Bison group would love to see that. Thank you.
And hi everyone, I'm Mike Fry. I am a portfolio manager at First Western Trust, and I, along with Brian Kujawski, co-led the Grizzly Bear group. So we actually had a really great diverse group, both in terms of age and location, spanning to some of the Michigan folk. And it just was a really great opportunity for a lot of introspection, especially to catch up from all the speakers from last night. The one big thing that stood out this morning was the idea of protecting ideas, the Frappuccino story, kind of nurturing them until they can kind of take on a mind of their own and run. So a lot of people are going to take that back with them, and also the idea of allowing the employees to choose the broom, I think was a really powerful statement for people to use in their own daily lives. So, and then for Vivienne, the gifting knowledge, it's almost sad that it's a novel concept to a lot of us. I think that that everyone is so protective of what they have, and so the idea that you could share this with the world is just was really powerful for us too. So, anything else to add?
Yeah, Michael was our main spokesperson, so thank you, Michael. My name's Brian, and one of the things that we talked about that we as men particularly have egos that we need to be very wary of, and we laughed about that, and that's why and prostates too, two things we both don't need. But that's why I let Michael handle all of this, because I've read a lot of books about the ego, that it's not important. But I wanted to just add to a couple of things. Michael did a great job facilitating, and I learned a lot from him. We talked about community as being such a critical thing. Thank you, Shawn, for articulating that as well as you did, and a lot of your other content. And that resonated with me personally about the correlation between community and people in your life, and proximity to good people and happiness, and that really struck a chord with me, and our group I think as well. We talked about, actually Michael talked about, he had some great insights in our group, and I think really kicked off good dialogue with many of them. One of the things he said was just really defining, and I know it was spoken about in the presentations, but defining who we are, our mission, what that really means before we go out into the world and try to do whatever we do. And I think we overlook that, and I think our group really resonated with that. So Michael, thank you for bringing that up. And then one other thing that we talked about that I think came up, it bubbled up after a lot of the presentations and during both of our sessions with the Grizzly Bears was the importance of breathing. And we both play golf, and we talk about breathing on the golf course. The proverbial stepping on the tee when you need to breathe and stripe it down the fairway. But that transfers in life in so many ways, where breath and that calm that it brings us, and that focus, and also all of the great repercussions, positive takes us out of our head for a moment and allows us to do those things. And also keeps us calm when we become angry. If we can just breathe for a moment before we respond, and maybe if somebody's laying on the horn on the road to you, to reading an email that upsets you, take a bit of time to breathe, maybe a few hours, and then react. So there was a lot of great stuff, and we're really grateful. So thank you all, and thank the speakers. The speakers were excellent, and all of the programs. Thanks.
I'm Jeff Moore. I am a leadership coach. Brian, I want to tell you that breathing thing doesn't work for me in golf. So we are the Mustangs, and our herd very much thinned out. We have Nicholas remaining as our lone. Gail and I were co-leaders. He's remaining as our lone Mustang. But in the first meeting, we came up with some good stuff. The goal was to create a circular economy. And one of the first things noticed was that there was the word children on one corner, the word future on another corner, and legacy on another corner. And we sort of agreed that this had to be done for them. And we talked about creating a set of values, creating awareness around the importance of this, and then advocacy, and then that it would take leadership. And leadership is not a science, it's an art form. We talked about the importance in leadership of building the kinds of relationships where people in the group could deal with competing ideas. That's what leaders do, build the kind of relationships where you can hold two opposing thoughts at the same time and come up with something for the greater good. And we were all very impressed with the high school student who spoke. I don't know if he's still here. And so to circle back to that, we really felt that this is crucial for our future and for our young people. And those of us from the older generations need to start thinking about that. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Angelo Kalafidis. I facilitated the Trout group. Ours was a very diverse group from location and culture and background. And we were discussing that it was great to have some wise speakers with the great big picture, and then other speakers with some great tools. And then we went, well, what do we do with all of that? And part of it was, we go, cool, we're going to leave and go into our own world now. And most of the team's gone. So what do we do with this? And so what we've agreed is we're going to get together, which is one of the outcomes that we said. We said, then what do we do with it? Because some people said, I don't know what to do with this. And others said, well, I can use this. Again, I'm not sure what the application. So part of where the outcome for us out of all of this is to move forward with it and continue with it. So as a group, we're going to work out what we do. And it's quite interesting about where do we want to be? Not all sure. How are we going to do it? Not really sure. What are we going to do? We're going to work together to try and work that out. And each of our different perspectives gave us that. I think that's one of the crucial outcomes that we got out of this whole session. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Lizanne Eisen, and Rick Gordon and I facilitated the elk group. And I would like to say that what Cynthia said for the coyotes resonated for us elks, and we already have our next meeting scheduled. We each have takeaways, and we're going to look forward to continuing to support each other in bringing this back to our communities.
I guess it's just two words from our group: individual and community. People did a lot of personal sharing, but we felt supported and collective. And I just want to, and the other thing, people felt so valuing of the time to process. I just want to encourage that time we had together. I think was super meaningful to sense making and constructive meaning making for us. And I think we really appreciate that, and want to thank you guys for scheduling that in.
Hello, I'm Liza Millett, and I'm on the board of Silicon Couloir. And I was working with Michael Edwards, and we were the Ospreys. And we just wanted to share our takeaways in the hopes maybe they would inspire your groups as well. So one of our takeaways was to discuss and also reward in our organizations and our families the concept of servant leadership. One was to commit to coming next year and each bringing 2 friends. And then one idea that came up in the group was if the conference could have a third day that was optional of a community service project or projects that could demonstrate servant leadership, that would be most welcome.
After the long line of animals come the dragonflies. We are very proud to represent the invertebrates, often overlooked and underappreciated. I'm not saying that we have been overlooked and underappreciated, but we sort of had an invertebrate theme. I'm Shannon Chuptrine, Executive Director of the Riverwind Foundation. I'll let my co-facilitator introduce herself, and then one of our Dragonfly team members, who is an invertebrate expert, is going to wrap it up.
Hello, everybody. I'm Caroline Croft Este, and I'm a co-founder of Vertical Harvest Farms. We talked a lot today about community and how we can show up in community. We have scheduled our Dragonfly meeting for the 1st of November, the first week of November, and we're going to all share back how we maybe paid it forward in community or shared it forward in community.
Hi, I'm Sarah Carrico, and I'm a researcher working right out of the Grand Teton National Park right now at the research station. And the thing that I'm focused on is how do we better care for our interdependence, thinking about ecological and societal systems together, and how do we move differently together to better care for the web of life. And the perhaps unexpected entry point to my work is the beauty and wonder of spiders. And they're apex predators of the largest group of animals actually living in the GYE, which are invertebrates. But they're often feared and misunderstood. Spiders are kind of like the grizzly bears and the wolves. And one of the spiders that I was thinking about when our group was talking about, how to take some of these great insights and tools that we had from the conference and bridge them out. And I was thinking of this spider called Hyptiodes. And it uses its body as a bridge. It spins a pie-shaped web with only 4 radii, and it holds that web under tension and then releases that web. And so it had us thinking, how can we, in our spheres of influence, in our lives, be that bridge and take ideas from here out into the world? And we talked about what tangled times these are, and recent research on tangle webs, which are created by Theridiid spiders in the Theridiid family, and one of those who you might know is the black widow. They found that those webs actually allow the spiders to hoist prey 50 times their own mass, which has me thinking about what tremendous opportunity we have in these tangled times. So I wanted to thank the organizers and my group for being part of all of this. Thank you.
I'm just going to go in the back room and cry now. So that was beautiful, Sarah. Thank you. That was incredible. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Thank you all for coming. We will follow up with an email with information on where we'll divide up all the sessions. They'll be posted on YouTube. There's a survey going around that's also digital. You can find it on your confirmation email. There's QR codes around, et cetera. Please do give us some input. We really appreciate that and need it. And there's an opportunity for you to give some significant input, not just like, yes, did you have fun? Was the food good? Lynn, do you want to say anything else? Okay. So thank you, everybody. Thank you to the speakers. Thank you to the volunteers. Thank you to the sound crew. Thank you all for showing up, being vulnerable, and with courage. I personally am so optimistic about the future of humanity. So I try not to go down the rabbit hole of, I've got a 22-year-old daughter who reminds me constantly of the other side, but you all give me the utmost hope, and I appreciate you all being here, and we'll